Hey everyone, for today's deep dive, we're going to be tackling the big question of masculinity and traditional values in the face of, well, everything that's going on in society right now. You know, all the big shifts and changes and particularly, I guess, the rise of feminism.
Right.
And how all that's kind of impacted how we see those things.
Yeah.
So we're going to be looking at this this book
Okay.
that really digs into this whole issue and takes a pretty critical look at where we are in society today, you know, and how we kind of got to this point.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
It's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, it is.
And one of the things that I found really interesting about this book is it starts off by going like way, way back.
Okay.
Like way back to like evolutionary biology.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Yeah.
it talks about how like these traditional roles that we think about, you know, like men being providers and protectors. It's not just like some random social construct,
Right.
you know, it's like ingrained in us. It's like in our DNA.
So it's saying that basically, like, we're wired
Yeah.
to be those strong, stoic
Yeah.
actors.
Yeah, like it's deep within us. And it's interesting because that goes against a lot of what we're seeing and hearing today.
Right, right.
You know, in society.
Yeah, like the messaging is kind of the opposite.
It's totally different.
Yeah.
And the book even digs into like the differences between male and female brains. You know, like how men tend to have stronger spatial reasoning skills, which makes sense if you think about it, you know, from like an evolutionary standpoint,
Yeah.
like hunting, navigating.
Right back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. And then women, they tend to have stronger emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
You know, which again makes sense, you know, for nurturing.
Social bonding and
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah.
So it's like our brains actually
to
evolved
complement each other.
to complement each other.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's
Yeah.
like we were designed to work together in a way.
Right. And the book actually goes on to say that societies that like stick to those traditional roles, they tend to be more stable overall.
Okay.
Now this is where it gets kind of controversial
Right.
because the book is suggesting that maybe this
Yeah.
for like total gender interchangeability,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's working against our natural inclination.
Huh. It really makes you think.
It does.
Like, have we gone too far in the other direction?
Yeah.
You know?
It's definitely food for thought.
It is, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's something to think about.
Definitely. But then, you know, on top of that, the book brings in this whole concept of the double bind for men,
Oh yeah.
which I thought was really fascinating because,
Yeah.
like, on one hand, we're told to be tough and stoic,
Right.
but then on the other hand, we're also expected to be sensitive and emotionally available.
Yeah, it's a mixed message.
A very mixed message.
It's like be strong, but also be in touch with your feelings.
Yeah.
And the book actually uses James Bond as an example.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he's this ultimate tough guy, right?
right.
But he's also like charming and, you know, in tune with women's emotion.
Yeah, he's got it all.
So he kind of embodies that whole like
That paradox.
that paradox. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're supposed to be both things at the same time,
Exactly.
which is kind of impossible.
Right.
Well, not impossible, but it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
And speaking of tough, the book doesn't really hold back when it comes to criticizing modern society, does it?
No, it doesn't pull any punches.
No, it's pretty blunt.
It's pretty direct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it argues that things have become increasingly feminized.
Okay.
Which it says has led to this like victimhood culture
Right.
that often disadvantages men.
It's like everybody's a victim these days.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because it even points to movements like Me Too.
Yeah.
And says, you know, while it started with good intentions,
It's kind of morphed into something that can be unfairly used against men.
it's become something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, it is.
But that's a really big movement to kind of critique like that.
Yeah. It's definitely challenging some widely accepted ideas.
Yeah.
It is. For sure.
Okay, so this is definitely a book that's making some waves.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So if this feminization is as pervasive as the book claims, what's the solution? What does it suggest men do?
Well, it basically issues a call to action.
Okay.
It says men need to reclaim their masculinity and reject these societal expectations that undermine their traditional roles.
So it's like pushing back against these trends,
Yeah.
reasserting like a more traditional sense of manhood.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Like going back to those core values and principles.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it outlines several strategies for doing this.
Okay.
One is embracing the biological differences between genders instead of trying to erase them.
So accepting that men and women are different.
Yes. And that those differences are actually good. Like they're strengths, not weaknesses.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It also talks about taking personal responsibility instead of adopting that victim mentality.
So owning your choices, owning your action.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. It's about taking control of your life.
Yeah.
And perhaps most controversially, The book suggests a return to traditional religious values
Oh, wow.
as a way to reclaim a sense of purpose and meaning.
Okay, so it's saying like those values provide a solid foundation for masculinity.
Yeah, they offer a framework for understanding what it means to be a man.
Interesting. So it's kind of like finding strength and guidance in faith.
Yeah, like tapping into that spiritual dimension.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's definitely a different perspective.
It is.
Okay.
But it's something that the book really emphasizes.
Yeah. Okay, so now shifting gears a little bit, the book also spends a good deal of time talking about fatherhood.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It puts a huge emphasis on the importance of father
Right.
and the traditional family structure. And it really laments the decline of both of those things in modern society.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of a recurring theme, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
like the things are kind of falling apart.
Right.
Yeah.
And it argues that, fatherly involvement is crucial
Yeah.
for healthy child development.
Yeah, I've heard that before, but what specific benefits does it highlight?
Well, it talks about how fathers often engage in a different style of play with their kids.
Okay.
Like it's more physical, more about pushing boundaries.
Okay.
And it argues that this type of play teaches kids valuable lessons
Okay.
about risk-taking resilience and even fairness.
So like dads bring a unique element to parenting.
They do.
That's essential for kids to thrive.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And it goes so far as to say that the traditional division of labor
Yeah.
with men as providers and women as nurturers, it's not just some arbitrary social construct.
Okay.
It claims it's actually rooted in our biology.
Interesting.
And that when it's embraced, it can actually lead to stronger families.
So it's saying that men and women have different strengths.
Yeah,
And when we kind of lean into those strengths,
right.
it creates a more harmonious family dynamic.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the book backs this up by citing a 2015 Pew Research Center report,
Okay.
which found that children with involved fathers are less likely to end up incarcerated.
Wow.
And they have better economic prospects later in life.
That's pretty significant.
It is.
Yeah.
It's pretty powerful stuff.
Okay, so it's not just about like the emotional well-being of the family, but also like the actual tangible outcome.
It affects everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the book doesn't stop there, does it?
No.
I remember it also takes aim at something it calls woke culture.
Yes, you're right, it does.
Yeah.
It goes on to kind of frame woke culture as a direct threat
Okay.
to traditional masculinity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It argues that this ideology promotes this narrative of male privilege and oppression that's actually detrimental to men's mental health
Okay.
and societal progress as a whole.
Wow, that's a pretty strong critique.
It is.
What specifically does it take issue with?
Well, it kind of digs into the tactics that it believes woke culture uses
Okay.
to silence opposing viewpoints.
Like what?
Things like gaslighting and public shaming.
Right. So like making people afraid to speak up?
Yeah, exactly.
okay.
If you don't agree with the woke narrative, then you're basically silenced or shamed.
Yeah.
And it even touches upon the influence of postmodern philosophy
Okay.
and the development of theories like critical race theory and intersectionality,
Right.
framing them within its critique.
So it's kind of like painting a picture of a movement that's become intolerant of any dissenting opinion.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold argument.
It is.
And this kind of leads into the book's discussion of something it calls the masculinity crisis, specifically focusing on issues like men's mental health and the legal disadvantages men often face.
Now that's a topic I'm particularly interested in. What kind of insights does the book offer on that front?
Well, it argues that societal expectations for men to suppress their emotions and tough it out are contributing to higher rates of suicide and substance abuse among men.
Yeah, if you bottle everything up, it's bound to have negative consequences.
Right. Exactly.
Wow.
It's not healthy to keep everything inside.
No.
And the book doesn't let the media off the hook either.
Okay.
It criticizes the way men are often portrayed,
Hmm.
either as bumbling fools or dangerous predators.
It's like we're either incompetent or we're a threat.
Right.
Yeah.
And it argues that this feeds into negative self-image and societal bias.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Yeah, it's like if that's all you see,
Right.
that's how you start to see yourself.
Yeah, and how society sees you.
Exactly.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
So the book is saying that these portrayals actually contribute to the very problems men are facing.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty deep.
Yeah, it is.
It's pretty profound.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
It sounds like this book is offering a pretty critical and maybe even controversial take.
Oh, it's definitely controversial,
Yeah.
but it's also thought-provoking.
Right.
You know, it makes you think.
It does, yeah.
It challenges your assumption.
It does, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely hooked. I can't wait to hear more about the solutions and strategies the book proposes.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation so far.
I agree. I think it's going to be a really interesting deep dive.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Me too.
All right, well, let's keep exploring.
Sounds good. So we've been talking about some pretty heavy stuff, you know, the state of masculinity these days, but the book doesn't just leave us with a bleak diagnosis. It actually offers some remedy, some solution.
Okay, I'm interested to hear what those are, because it's one thing to point out the problem,
Right.
but it's another thing to actually offer ways to fix them.
Exactly.
So what does it suggest? What can men actually do to reclaim their masculinity?
Well, one of the most interesting and maybe even controversial arguments it makes is that we need to rethink this whole idea of gender equality.
Well, hold on.
Yeah,
That's a pretty radical statement, isn't it?
it is.
I mean, isn't equality something we should be striving for?
That's what we're always told, but the book challenges that assumption.
Okay.
It goes back to evolutionary biology and psychology,
Right.
and argues that men and women are fundamentally different, not just socially conditioned, but wired different.
Okay, so it's saying it's not just nurture, it's nature too.
Exactly. And it's not saying that one is better than the other, but that these differences shouldn't be seen as a source of inequality, but as something to be recognized and even celebrated.
Okay, so instead of trying to make everyone the same,
We should embrace the differences.
exactly. And it suggests that trying to force men and women into these identical roles actually goes against our nature.
Like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly.
But if we accept these differences, then how does that translate to a functioning society?
That's a great question.
Especially when it comes to relationships.
Yeah, and the book really gets into this idea of a covert contract in relationship.
The covert contract.
Yeah.
That sounds a little ominous.
It is a bit.
What does that mean?
Well, it's basically saying that despite what we might think,
Okay.
relationships, especially marriage, they're often structured in ways that disadvantage men.
Really?
Yeah, even if it's not obvious at first.
What kind of ways?
Well, it points to things like divorce laws,
Okay.
which it says often favor women.
Right. I've heard that argument before.
Yeah, it's a common one.
But isn't that meant to protect women who may have sacrificed their careers to raise children? Yeah, that's the traditional rationale.
Right.
And there are definitely cases where that's true.
Right.
But the book argues that these laws are often applied too broadly.
Yeah.
Even when both partners have equal earning potential.
So it's saying that the intention might be good,
Right.
but the outcome isn't always fair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just focus on the legal system.
Okay.
It also talks about the pressure on men to get married in the first place.
Okay.
Like how there's this expectation that you're not a real man until you're married.
Right. It's like that societal pressure.
Exactly.
You got to get hitched.
Yeah. And the book is saying that men need to be aware of the potential downsides
Okay.
before entering into those commitments.
So it's not about saying don't get married.
No.
It's about being informed.
Exactly.
Knowing what you're getting into.
Yeah, it's like understanding the terms of the contract
Right.
before you sign it.
Because sometimes the fine print can be pretty tricky.
Exactly.
So what about when things do go wrong, like in a divorce?
Well, the book goes on to argue that men often bear the brunt of the financial burden in divorces, even when both partners worked and contributed equally.
Right.
It talks about alimony, child support, the division of assets,
Right.
and suggests that these things often end up favoring women.
So again, it's saying even if the intention is to be fair, the outcome isn't always equitable.
That's the book's perspective.
Okay.
And it goes even further, introducing this term divorce rate.
Divorce rape, that's a pretty loaded term.
It is.
I mean, I can see how it would apply in certain situations.
Yeah.
But it definitely feels a little extreme.
Yeah, it's definitely provocative.
Yeah.
But the point the book is trying to make is that many men feel violated
Right.
during and after a divorce.
Okay.
They feel like they've been stripped of their dignity, their rights as father, their ability to move on with their lives.
So it's that feeling of powerlessness,
Exactly.
that feeling of being wronged by the system.
Yeah, and it connects this to a larger issue, the impact all of this has on men's mental health.
Right, because if you feel like you've been cheated by the system and you've lost everything in the process,
Right.
it's going to take a toll on you.
Exactly. And the book doesn't shy away from discussing the consequences of this.
Okay.
It cites statistics showing that divorced men are more likely to commit suicide than married men.
Wow, that's really sad.
It is.
And it makes this whole conversation about fairness and equality
Right.
feel even more important.
It does.
Yeah.
It's not just about abstract principles,
Yeah.
it's about real lives.
Yeah.
And this sense of urgency carries over into the book's analysis of the legal system more broadly.
Okay.
It paints a pretty bleak picture, arguing that the legal system is inherently biased against men.
So it's not just about divorce.
No.
It's about a systemic bias.
Exactly.
It plays out in various legal arenas.
Right, and it uses statistics to back up its claim.
Okay.
For example, pointing out that fathers make up only about 17% of custodial parents.
That's a pretty big gap.
It is.
But couldn't that be attributed to factors other than gender bias?
Yeah.
Like mothers being more likely to be the primary caregiver.
That's a valid point.
Okay.
But the book argues that even when you take those factors into account, there's still evidence of a bias that favors mothers.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it extends this argument to other areas of family law.
Like
alimony.
alimony, right?
Yeah.
Those payments one spouse makes to the other after a divorce.
Yeah, and the book argues that alimony, which was originally intended to support women who couldn't work, is now often used unfairly against men, even in situations where both spouses had successful careers.
So it's saying that the original purpose of alimony has been distorted and is now being used in ways that weren't intended.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
And it doesn't stop there. It also criticizes the lack of paternity rights for men, particularly when it comes to decisions about unborn children.
Oh, wow.
It brings up the issue of abortion, claiming that men often have no legal say in the matter, even if they desperately want to be fathered.
Right. That's a very controversial issue.
It is.
Yeah.
And the book's perspective on it is likely to spark a lot of debate.
Yeah, no kidding.
But it's raising these important questions about fairness and equality in the legal system, and whether the current system is really serving the best interests of both men and women.
Yeah, it's a good question.
It is.
Because if it's supposed to be about equality, then shouldn't both parents have a say?
Exactly.
It's a tough one.
It is.
So it seems like the book is advocating for a major reassessment
It is.
of how we approach gender and relationship within the legal framework.
Yeah, like a complete overhaul of the system.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just about tweaking things here and there.
Yeah.
It's about like a fundamental shift.
It's about a paradigm shift.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't just point out the problems, right?
No, it doesn't.
It offers solutions as well.
It does.
Okay. What kind of solutions?
Well, one of the key suggestions is that men need to become more aware of their legal rights. And more proactive in advocating for themselves within the legal system.
So it's a call for men to educate themselves and to fight for their interests.
Exactly.
Okay.
It encourages men to stop being passive victims and start taking control of their legal battles.
So basically to man up and stand up for themselves.
Right.
You know?
Whether it's in divorce proceedings or other legal matters where they feel like their rights are being infringed upon.
Yeah, because knowledge is power, right?
Exactly.
If you know your rights, you can actually do something about it.
Right. And the book stresses the importance of men educating themselves
Okay.
about their legal rights, about the potential pitfalls of marriage and divorce,
Right.
and about the strategies they can use to protect themselves and their interests.
So it's like arming yourself with information.
Exactly.
So you can go into these situations prepared.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that.
It even suggests getting involved in organizations that are working to reform family law and push for greater equality in the legal system.
So it's not just about individual action.
No.
It's about collective efforts as well.
Right. It's about changing the system itself,
Right.
not just working within it.
Wow, this has been really eye-opening.
It has.
It's clear that this book is tackling some really complex and sensitive issues.
Yeah, it is.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Right.
But in addition to the legal system, the book also examines the role of media in shaping our perceptions of masculinity.
Right. Because the media has a huge influence on how we see the world.
It does.
So how does the media factor into this whole conversation about masculinity?
Well, the book argues that the media, especially in recent years, has been pushing a very negative and distorted image of men.
Okay.
And it claims that this portrayal is having a really negative impact on men's mental health, their self-esteem, their relationship. So it's not just about the legal systems and societal structure.
No.
It's also about the cultural messages we're constantly bombarded with.
Exactly.
Right.
The book is saying that these messages shape our understanding of what it means to be a man.
Right.
And that the current narrative is incredibly damaged.
Okay, so it's like the media is creating this distorted view of masculinity.
Yeah, and it gives examples of how men are often depicted in movies, TV shows, advertising.
Like what kind of example?
Well, it argues that men are consistently shown as either bumbling fools, incompetent dads, or violent aggressors.
Right, so it's like we're either a joke or a threat.
Exactly.
There's no in between.
Right.
And it's interesting because those portrayals can become self-fulfilling prophecies in a way.
Absolutely.
Like if that's all you see, it's hard not to internalize those messages.
Right, like you start to believe that's all you're capable of.
Yeah. And it affects how society sees you too.
Exactly.
That's a real problem.
It is.
And it's not just about the negative portrayals themselves.
Right.
The book also points out the lack of positive representations of men in media.
Yeah, it asks, where are the strong, compassionate, responsible male role models?
Right.
Where are the men who embody healthy masculinity?
It's like the media is creating a vacuum where those positive representations should be.
It is.
And without those positive role models,
Yeah.
it's no wonder men are struggling to define their own identity.
Exactly.
Like, what does it even mean to be a man today?
Right.
If all you see are these distorted images.
And the book argues that this lack of positive representation leaves boys and young men with a very skewed and damaging view of what it means to be a man.
Right. Like, they're not given a healthy roadmap to follow.
Exactly. And it doesn't just blame the media for this.
Okay.
It points to a broader cultural shift that it attributes to feminist ideology.
Okay, so we're back to this critique of feminism.
Yeah.
How does the book connect feminism to this negative portrayal of men in media?
Well, it argues that the push for gender equality has in many ways backfired.
Yeah.
Instead of creating a more balanced and equitable society, it claims that it's actually led to a demonization of masculinity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It suggests that men are being portrayed as the enemy in this narrative.
Okay.
And that this portrayal is contributing to a lot of the problems men are facing today.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
I mean, I can see how some people would interpret it that way.
Right.
But it's definitely a controversial claim.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
But even if you don't agree with that perspective, it's hard to deny that there's a lot of negativity surrounding masculinity these days.
You're right.
Like, it's almost become taboo to be a man.
It feels that way sometimes.
Yeah.
And the book is tapping into that.
Yeah.
It's tapping into that sense of frustration and disillusionment that many men are feeling.
Right.
It's saying that something's not right.
Yeah.
That the way we're talking about gender and masculinity is broken.
Right. Like, we need to have more balanced conversations.
Exactly.
Whatever.
And that's where the book starts to offer solutions.
Okay, because it's not just about complaining.
No.
It's about finding a way forward.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are those solutions?
Well, they're all about reclaiming masculinity.
Okay.
Not in a toxic or aggressive way,
Right.
but in a healthy and empowering way.
Okay, I like that.
It's about redefining what it means to be a man in the 21st century and about finding ways to thrive
Okay.
in a world that often seems hostile to traditional masculinity.
That sounds really relevant
It is.
for a lot of men today.
Yeah.
I'm definitely intrigued. I'd love to hear more about those solutions.
Me too. And we'll explore those in detail in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, sounds good. I'm ready when you are. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, huh?
We have.
Really dug into some tough topics.
Yeah.
The pressures on men, the shifting landscape of relationships,
Right.
the legal system, the media.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to process.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious to hear more about the solutions that the book proposes, because it's one thing to diagnose the problem,
Right.
but it's another thing to actually offer ways to address it. So what can men actually do to reclaim their masculinity and find a sense of purpose in a world that often feels, stacked against them?
Well, the book actually offers a lot of really practical advice.
Okay.
And one of the most interesting suggestions, I think, is a return to traditional religious.
Okay, so like finding strength and solace in faith.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an angle I haven't really considered before.
Yeah, and it's not about like blindly following dogma or anything.
Right.
It's more about recognizing that religion has historically provided a framework for understanding.
Okay.
For centuries, religion offered men clearly defined roles and responsibilities.
Like being a protector, a provider,
Exactly.
leader within the family and community.
Yeah, and that those roles maybe feel less defined or valued in today's world.
Yeah, for sure.
So the book is arguing that tapping into that sense of purpose, that connection to something larger than oneself,
Yeah.
can be really empowering for men.
It's almost like reclaiming a sense of the sacred masculine, right?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Like that archetype of the strong spiritual warrior or leader.
Right.
That seems to be missing from a lot of modern narrative.
Yeah, it's definitely not something you see a lot of these days.
No.
So it's about finding your own spiritual path.
Yes.
One that aligns with your values and your sense of self.
Exactly. And another point the book makes is the importance of male mentorship.
Oh, yeah. Like having older, more experienced men to guide you,
Right.
to show you the ropes,
Exactly.
especially when you're young and trying to figure things out.
Especially then.
Yeah,
It's like that saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
Right.
Well, it takes a tribe of men to raise a man.
yeah, that's a good one.
Right.
Yeah, the book really emphasizes the importance of brotherhood, men supporting each other.
Sharing wisdom, holding each other accountable.
It's that sense of camaraderie and shared purpose, right?
Right.
That can be really powerful.
It is.
And speaking of accountability, the book really stresses the importance of personal responsibility,
Oh, yeah. Big time.
owning your choices and your actions.
Exactly.
Not like blaming others for your problems.
It's about taking control of your life.
So shifting from a victim mentality to a more empowered mindset. I like that.
It's about recognizing that while you can't control everything that happens to you,
Right.
you can choose how you respond.
Yeah.
And you can choose to make positive changes in your life.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
It's about taking ownership of your own destiny.
Yeah, and a big part of that is rejecting the victim mentality.
Right.
That's so prevalent these days.
Easy to fall into that trap.
It is, especially when you feel like the world's against you.
Right.
But the book is encouraging men to stop seeing themselves as helpless victims and start seeing themselves as agents of change.
As men who have the power to shape their own destiny.
Exactly.
Love that.
It's about flipping the script.
Yeah. Moving from a passive role to a more active and assertive role.
Yeah,
And the book also addresses woke culture
it does.
and offers strategies for resisting its influence.
Yeah, it encourages men to challenge those narratives, to refuse to be shamed or silenced.
Right. To stand up for what they believe in, even when it's unpopular.
Even then, yeah.
So it's about having the courage to speak your truth.
It is.
And it goes beyond just resistance.
Right.
The book also encourages men to create their own space,
Yes.
their own communities, where they can connect with other like-minded men,
Yeah.
share their experiences,
Right.
support each other,
Exactly.
and reclaiming their masculinity.
It's about building a counterculture.
Yeah, like a brotherhood
Yeah, like a tribe.
where men can be men without
Yeah.
judgment. Wow. I mean, this is really inspiring stuff.
It is.
It's not just about complaining about the problem.
No.
It's about actually finding solutions.
Yeah, it's about taking action.
Yeah. And it gives me hope now
Me too.
that things can change,
They can.
that men can reclaim their rightful place in the world.
Absolutely.
I've got to say, this deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
I agree.
It's given me a lot to think about, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way.
I hope so.
And if anyone out there wants to explore these ideas further, I highly recommend checking out the full book.
Yes, definitely.
You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
Right.
It's definitely worth a read for anyone who's interested in understanding the challenges and opportunities facing men in today's world.
Yeah, it's a must read.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So I guess the takeaway here is that the future of masculinity isn't set in stone.
No, it's not.
It's being shaped right now
Yes.
by the choices that men make.
Exact. So choose wisely.
Choose wisely.
Yeah. Be the best man you can be.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.